everyone, it's Casper Raptorial. So, how was your Thanksgiving in this year, 2017? I'm sorry I've been away for a while. I was going to make a few new videos to upload the week after break. Few rough and confusing days hit, and I've been trying to reorient myself a little. Now, just before I left on the 22nd of November for Thanksgiving vacation, bringing a few novels to read along the way, and during Thanksgiving downtime, I spoke with one of my somewhat distant cousins who was having a very hard time a few years ago, as was I, as has happened to many people over the past century. Well, actually a little longer now. Our families broke apart when we were both very young, and to us and to our siblings, it did tremendous damage. At some time in your life, and what time that this is will vary depending on largely not only your age, but maybe more so your experience. There comes a point when you really feel a giant hole in your identity, in your development. You cry over the experiences you should have had. Over Thanksgiving, the family members that got together, it was a relatively small group this year, but we actually had a very good time. This is one of the only times during the year when we do get together in any significant numbers. We attempt to around Christmas, even though we're not actively Christian by heritage, yes, but I don't know if any of my family actually actively practices. Beside the point. I've said I'm an atheist several times, and Christmas is hardly a truly religious holiday anymore. It's been so highly commercialized that people are often much more concerned with whether or not they have bought presents for everyone at the family gathering and whether they can get there on time. Oh boy. My parents, some years when we were growing up, the rushes. Well, my cousin and I were talking on the phone. The holidays can sometimes be really brutal. In not just some ways, but a lot of ways. We're actually planning on having our side of the family's Christmas celebration in January this year because some of us can't get together until then. For me, it's no problem. This actually brings in an idea of how to handle Christmas shopping. And what I came up with a few years ago was come up with general ideas of what to get people you're going to get stuff for. Again, don't worry about getting stuff for everyone. Really, it does, or it should, focus more on the just being together. And this commercialization will use anything it can. They'll exploit anything they can. So Christmas being so commercialized, it's not just the fault of the big stores or big companies or big should I say mass consumer culture that we've got, that with many systems, capitalism has, it's a great system, but it does have some downsides, not just disadvantages. It does have some things to be wary of. It is not the oppressive demon that a lot of media, particularly children's media, likes to portray it as. It's actually the most fair system of all. It's the actual monster is communism, but we'll not get into that right now. It's going to be a long discussion as it is. There are some things to watch out for, and the overconsumption, but buying into the, ironically buying into the consumer culture too much is one of those risks, but that can be managed on an individual level. Again, with what I talk about in my rule of net resources video, I'm starting to make money management videos, and the idea of controlled indulgence, controlled spending. Resource management is a skill that can be learned, and money is a resource. So what I came up with was, you have a general idea for the presents you want to get people that you're going to give presents to, is make an idea list, or keep one in your mind, I guess, and spread it out throughout the year. Throughout the entire year. Just buy something maybe here, maybe there, build up a pile so that around the holidays you can just give it away. You can avoid, usually not completely, but you can hugely avoid the great wintertime rushes. I remember the first couple of years I started this, I thought of it and started doing this strategy. By the time the winter holidays would come around, I would only have one or two people left to get presents for on my list. This year I'm being a little more conservative with my money, but that's also because I don't know quite how our celebration is going to go, but I'll figure that out in the next few weeks. Anyway, so yeah, the concern has been twisted to be too much around that overconsumption and not about actual family, which is what a lot of the Christmas specials will show, but they don't have a lot of ways to actually put the true family values into practice. Even the shows that try to address this. And then, of course, after the holidays are over, I guess around right after New Year's, it's back to work, and of course, for the children, back to a public school system that is extremely destructive. After coming home from those destructive public schools, and there are private schools, there are charter schools, but they're usually very expensive, certainly a lot more expensive than most families can afford today, families trying to survive, and chances are if you're living with a single parent, particularly if it's a single mother, if they are sending their kids to private school, it's because they're draining the money from the other parent, the father, or from the welfare state in general, which steals it from other people. And the children have no say in the matter. The children have no say whether to go to school or not. The parents can choose to either homeschool or private school them. The parents have a choice, the children do not. And, my dad and I were talking a few days ago, and we were talking about just situations people find themselves in where they know a situation they're in is bad, but they have no control over it. That's a horrible situation to be in. It's really, really hard. And we forget way too often that children are in that situation throughout their childhoods. Many of them long into their adulthoods as well, with the way the world's becoming. After coming home from school, if you knew these days at all, back in the days where your family was still together, there would be times where you would gather around the dinner table or around the living room, maybe play a game or watch a movie together, or first dinner then that. Particularly on weekends, I remember when my sisters and I, my two full-blooded sisters and I, were very little. We would do that every weekend. Friday and Saturday nights would be movie nights. And I really miss that. The chance is gone forever now, unless the kids try to do it with their families, but there's not a lot of trust in couples anymore. But there would be days, and a lot of us are really starting to miss them. We're starting to want them again, where we would be together, support each other. I and a couple of my siblings and cousins want to reconstruct that. They're not gone if the younger generations we have today, the millennials, and not sure what the generation after the millennials is called. Are they called Generation Y or Z, or which one is Y or Z? I'm not sure. But you know what I mean. If they can reconstruct that, for generations older than that, I think, for those who haven't stayed together, I think, even if it's not too late, their trust has been destroyed. My two full siblings' parents divorced when I was 10. Two full siblings. Yeah. Sorry, I went to. Thought I was switching topics there. No. That is. I was talking about my two full-blood siblings. They are both sisters, and they were even younger. I was 10. They were younger when our parents divorced, and for decades the family dynamic just kept getting worse and worse. And the three of us cried. Cried a lot. Now, very few of us were around the first day, Thursday, Thanksgiving Day. We did have our large Thanksgiving feast on Thursday evening, and then Friday a few more people came. And they had their main feast on Thursday. We mostly came together Friday because of everyone's different schedule, so that happens. And again, another reason why split families don't work is because it's extremely difficult to coordinate anything, even at the times where you want to get together. If just a couple of family members are here, a split family there, a split piece of the family all over the place, you can almost never all be together again. And this time, of course, we're trying to deal with even more family members, and a few more people did show up Friday evening. Well, Friday morning, I went with my sisters to see the movie Coco in theaters. And what was a lot of fun about that was, well, first of all three of the older siblings were together, and it was almost like going to the theaters when we were kids again, because it was just the three of us and one of my sister's husbands, but only one of them is married. My two half siblings are too young, and me and the other sister, well, haven't found anyone. Well, that's not exactly true. I just don't know. I'm not going to tell the whole family history, but anyway, I don't want to say there were 3 people there when there were 4. I just don't know how much of. I probably don't want to tell a lot of my siblings' stories because those are for them to tell if they want to, when and if they want to. But anyway, there were 4 of us there, but it was kind of like. It was kind of like we were just having fun as young adults again. Well, we are young adults, but you know what I mean. Anyway, but also what was fun was that none of us had heard anything about it or done any real looking at what the story was. So all of us went in with 0 expectations. And for those of you who have seen Coco, it's an amazing movie. Far beyond superior to just about every other movie that I went to see that came out, I think, in the last couple of years. Other than perhaps 47 Meters Down, which wasn't a better movie than Coco, but for what it was trying to be, did very, very well. For what it was trying to be, it did almost as well. It's a completely different type of movie, but, oh, hey, finally, a Shark Attack movie that was not a Jaws ripoff. It was its own thing. That certainly elevated it to a noticeable degree. I do have one problem with the movie Coco, and I'll discuss it in more detail on a separate review of the movie. Briefly, it was the fact that, well, first of all, I'm very happy to see a movie about the value and importance of family. We've really been missing that, even more so in TV shows than in movies. As far as I've seen. I am getting into Stranger Things, but again, no strong families. The one family that actually has a dad, the dad is a wuss. And that's been going on for far too long. But, so at the start of Coco, at the start of the movie, the family is horrible to the main character. This 10-year-old boy. They keep him restrained despite the to the detriment, despite his passions, and to the detriment of his development and experience that a child should have. I'm also currently reading the Star Wars novel Rogue Planet, which is about a 12-year-old Anakin Skywalker, and interesting thing about that one is the experience of Anakin at that age, forget when he becomes far later on, I mean this is when he's 12, the necessity of a child to have certain experiences is addressed a lot in that book. And that I'm finding really enjoyable because I haven't really seen it addressed as head-on and directly in a Star Wars novel before. And in Coco, again, it's like school, and a lot of families these days, it's all restrictions. They destroy the guitar that he made himself by his own hands. So he goes to try and find this long-dead celebrity's guitar. I'm not going to give much away. Gets caught up in a generations-long mystery and ends up solving both it and a massive family misunderstanding that's been going on about that long. He learns the value of family because there's a point in he gets pushed to a point in the beginning where you've seen this before. I don't want to be a part of this family. Because pushed to a point where he says that. And runs away. And through the story, he learns to cherish family and put them first. But does his family ever apologize for the cruelty they did unto him? I'll give you 3 guesses, though my guess is you're only going to need 1 guess. And there, of course, we have the double standard all too common in families that I am sick and tired of. That when a child puts even 1 toe out of line, rebels, or even so much as questions the elders a little, one little act of rebellion that is actually a very natural and should be expected from adults with any recollection of what it was like to be a kid. Again, something talked about in Rogue Planet. 2 stories are totally different, but the very natural part of just being young, of going through the younger developmental years, that should be expected. The crackdown by authority figures is usually disproportionately harsh. Yet when a parent, or in particular, the excessively abusive public school system or step-parent, abuses their power or acts out of selfishness or covering their own asses, not only does the child have no power in the situation, but there are no social consequences to the adults. I am really sick and tired of that. Now, I've talked before about what schools are becoming. I talk quite a lot about this in my Teach Smarter, Not Stricter videos, and I will bring this topic up from time to time because there's a lot to be said and a lot to be cautious of. I am tired of seeing broken families everywhere, of seeing movies where there's not a single stable family in sight. So, to go and see Coco, a movie that emphasized family, that really talked about the value and the importance of family, was amazing. It's just the no consequences for the adults came as a real problem. And I had this interesting brief conversation with one of the other paleontologists I work with today. It wasn't the day I was working with him specifically. I was working in vertebrate paleontology. Today, tomorrow it's invertebrate paleontology, but I mean that's beside the point. But anyway, we had a brief discussion, and I'm having to reorient myself a little now after one big holiday vacation. Have yet to see what we'll do about the winter solstice vacation. Christmas actually is a winter solstice celebration adapted by Christianity for the Christian faith, and then later on, of course, commercialized. But that really is what it is. I mean, the tree is a winter solstice symbol. In any case, so the problem that our family is facing in getting together is that it's split up into 5-10 different pieces, a bunch of single adults. It's not good. But there's nothing the kids can do. The children have no choice. And they also don't have a choice in whether to go to public schools or not. The parents have a choice. The children do not. And one massive problem I have is what middle and high schools do to teenagers who are actually looking forward to discussions about, dating, sexuality, and just how to build good, healthy relationships. This is where it starts, or at least this is the ages where the not just the hormonal urges, but also the real mental interest starts. I want to say something besides mental, because it's more basal than that, but it's late and I'm tired. I'll come up with a better expression some other time. But particularly Western high schools now, it's all about boys and men being rapists and untrustworthy. They teach men not to rape, thing pushed by the leftists and the feminists, which has completely destroyed gender relations. Now, I didn't talk about with this person. I didn't talk at work about how the level of anger that I have, but I did talk briefly about this. It would be so much better if, whether in health classes or just a life skills class, or just an approach to life portion of the curriculum, just look, you want you want dating, you want relationships, and I'm meaning heterosexual relationships. All the other categories, a whole nother discussion. My stance on them, to just give an umbrella perspective for now, and just very briefly, I'm a live and let live person, except when heterosexual relationships, male-female bonding, is so thrown to the side, when it is so sacrificed that those relationships, which are the majority, they are what kept humans alive for 200,000 years, when that is destroyed, and it has been, then we have a problem. What to do about that problem, I'm not quite sure yet, because all teaching of how to build good relationships has been sacrificed, and in the mainstream, I'm not sure how to get back. There are people who talk about it. There are articles, there are books about the core heterosexual male-female relationships and how to build strong bonds and strong families. But it's completely been wiped from schools, if it ever was there. Maybe at some point it was, but certainly not in the last many decades. Unless you know how to find sources that specifically talk about it, where to find these articles, these podcasts, these videos, these books. Unless you know how to search them out, you're not going to come across them, and that is truly tragic, because there's no guidance anymore, and a couple of movies here and there is not enough. In any case, just heading out with family, I did have quite an enjoyable break, especially that second day when there was enough Thanksgiving feast, enough left in the evening that we did have a big get together. Sadly, it was little pieces of the family and not extended nuclear family, or several branches of. I mean, that is what an extended family is. It's just extensions of the nuclear family. Instead, it was little pieces, but there were enough of us where we had a good time, and there were a couple little kids there. Actually, I should. Again, I'm going to address schools again. These, I guess, tween age girls. They weren't quite teenagers yet. They're actually quite small for for the ages they were, but that's beside the point. I mean, I was really small too at that age. Actually, I'm still small for a guy. Again, beside the point. They were talking about shows they liked to watch, and one of them was what's it called? Loudmouth, I think, which I've not watched. I've heard some things about, but this one girl was telling me about how a boy was going to his friend who was pretending to be an expert on girls. I have not watched the show, and he kept giving these wacky pieces of advice. Eventually said, which didn't work out. He eventually said, "Oh, why don't you give the girl you like chocolate? Girls like chocolate." So this was happening in the show, and this girl who was at the party was telling me about this, and she said, "Well, I know it's a stereotype that girls like chocolate," and it kept repeating every time she would talk about a show she liked, and something was said or something came up that was kind of what people call, I guess, stereotypical. She felt she always had to say, "Well, I know that's, my God, schools. Can you just not let kids be kids? Do you always have to be this super cautious, this?" I mean, she was, she was talking excitedly about shows she liked and was passionate about, but it's like every couple sentences had to be interrupted by some kind of political correctness, and schools, families, stop shoving this hyper caution down kids' throats. Kids need to test boundaries. They need to talk about what they're passionate about without feeling the need to watch everything they say. It's another thing that goes on in split families. You can almost never talk about how you actually feel, because suddenly everything's hypersensitive. I've seen this a lot, and we've got to get rid of that. It's quite sad, really. It was sad to watch that. That be so ingrained in kids now. Even when, as a whole, we actually had a pretty good Thanksgiving break.